Hello, everyone. My name is Shannon Patterson, and I'm a third-year pharmacist at the Washington State University College of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences. Today, I will be interviewing Steve Riddle on his career journey in the field of pharmacy. Steve is currently the Director of Clinical Development at Wolters Kluwer and a WSU College of Pharmacy alumni. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Shannon. Great to be here.
So first off, can you tell us about what you do specifically at Wolters Kluwer?
Yeah, I'll do my best. Wolters Kluwer is a fairly large company. It's a global company, and it has a large health division. And so I work in an area of Wolters Kluwer that develops software. So my job is actually in product, or what's sometimes called product management. So within a software company, what the product team does is really, be responsible for looking for market problems, understanding what those are, developing software solutions that address those customer problems, working with the development team to get that software built, and then launching it into the market and making sure that it's successful. So it's part of it is actually technology management, and part of it's more just more like shepherding a product and a business solution into the marketplace.
Wow, that's so interesting. I know that's not a common area in the field of pharmacy, and I think a lot of students are probably really interested in how you became interested in this field.
Yeah, well, it kind of came to me, in the sense that I was working at the University of Washington, and I was working as a quality improvement specialist, and I was managing medication cost and formulary issues and these things. And as I was working through those areas, it was a time when technology was starting to take off in healthcare. Electronic medical records were being brought to bear against the patient records, but it still seemed like we were just really missing the boat as far as having technology that did what we needed to do. And I could tell as we were moving into more of a value-based marketplace and outcomes were going to become more important, that we were going to need technology to assist us with collecting that data, tracking that data, and really helping us understand whether we were making care improvements or not. And so about that time, I got a call from a small startup company called Pharmacy One Source that was looking for a pharmacist to help them develop company strategy. And I immediately said, no, why would I want to go work in industry? And I hung up the phone. And then I began to think about it. And I realized, well, I always complain that the software doesn't do what we want it to do, that it doesn't, really meet the clinician's needs. And so it would just make sense that, someone like me would go over and work with a company like that to try and help them correct that problem, to be that bridge between what they're building and a successful product that can really help us manage patient care. So I changed my mind and got a hold of them, and the job started about 11 years ago for me. And that's pulled me into, obviously you kind of pointed out, a much different world than my traditional pharmacy model.
Absolutely. That is very cutting edge and very exciting, and definitely a great reason why we have in pharmacy a reduction in errors and things like that we do in our day-to-day life now.
Yes.
So what would you say is the most exciting thing about what you currently do?
Wow. It is exciting in the sense that, when you're working as a pharmacist, you can impact, the lives of the patients you work with, and you realize that as a manager and different positions, you can impact even more lives in ways that you didn't expect. So since I've been working with Wolters Kluwer, we've developed, and I've helped develop a number of programs that are technology focused, providing clinical decision support, analytics, and other types of tools, and to launch programs like antimicrobial stewardship, or more severe medication management type efforts, or we actually have a program that detects sepsis in real time, actually 24 hours early, to eliminate, and reduce patient deaths around sepsis. As of next week, I'll be releasing a new program on opioid stewardship that I'm really hoping helps hospitals launch efforts around controlling opioid use and reducing, patient adverse events. So it's really amazing when you can work on something with customers and understand a problem, bring a solution to bear and release it out, and then, see all these hospitals adopt it and the impact of that. It's very exciting. I would also say that we're beginning to work with things like artificial intelligence and machine learning to introduce that into our applications. And that's been really exciting to see what the promise of future technology can offer in this space.
Absolutely. I think that is definitely solutions to a lot of the issues that we do see rising and constantly changing throughout our time in pharmacy. So what would you say is one of the most common misconceptions that people have about a career in pharmacy?
Yeah. Well, I suppose when you say people, you might mean students, and especially those interested in the early parts of their career in pharmacy and like, where's this a good path or not. And the thing that I hear a lot is, well, I'm really interested in pharmacy because I really like biology and chemistry and biochemistry and how chemicals work in the body. And when I hear that, I always kind of smile because it's so great. I love that passion for basic sciences, and I was a real biology freak myself. But then you realize as you get into pharmacy that what you do on a daily basis is really quite different than that. The knowledge that you use, around, evidence-based care and, around managing people, if you're an administrator or basically implementing best practices and understanding how to operationalize care delivery, and all those kind of things really began to take over, what you do, and it's the knowledge set that you end up using and the skill set you end up using in your practice seems very different than what you learned as a student. On the other hand, that foundational learning as a student is critical to be able to make decisions for patients and around drug therapy. At a future level when you're looking at gray areas. It also just builds, a knowledge base and a critical thinking approach that, can't be underestimated how important that is for, moving your career forward and learning different types of information. So, but I think it's that whole idea of what pharmacists use in their brain every day. It's really probably a misconception.
Absolutely. We definitely see that. And I think you were referencing to students. That is definitely a misconception among many students. So I'm really happy you touched on that, and filling in the black and white information and really filling in those gray areas too, I think is really crucial for a lot of the pharmacy students' misconceptions. So building off of that, you have touched on this a little bit, but where do you see the future of pharmacy going? I know that you are in technology and you've seen some of these innovations already throughout your career. So where would you say even in future of now?
Yeah, that's a $1 million or maybe even a much bigger number value question. I think really we don't even know where healthcare is going right now. Honestly, it's been such a turbulent 10 years, and to say where pharmacy is going, I think pharmacy's been one of the areas that is most turbulent, frankly. So I'm not sure exactly where I see the manpower going, like how many people do we need to perform pharmacy functions? That part I think is something that students are nervous about, colleges of pharmacy talk about a lot. But when I just think about where healthcare is going and where pharmacy's at, I do see a lot of opportunity and a bright future. First, just thinking about the fact that pharmacists really are the medication experts. The number one way in which we treat and prevent disease in the United States is medications. So it just makes sense that pharmacists have a place at the table because we are those experts, right? And I think if you look at chronic disease management and diabetes and cardiovascular care, which are eating up enormous amounts of the payer budget, CM and Medicare and Medicaid, medications are the number one way in which we manage those conditions. You get specialty pharmacy and the rise of the biologicals and large molecule drugs that are driving so much of the expense in the marketplace now, and that they're tied to risk-based or value-based contracts that focus on outcomes. I think there's clearly an enormous role for pharmacy in helping to manage those very expensive resources. I think where I see pharmacy going is it's turning the corner to where we're teaching pharmacists how to work with patients and become better patient care providers. But I really see the role of pharmacy moving now into broader scopes of applications, such as population health management, using technology, virtual meeting technology, care protocols, virtual assistants, places where expertise in how drugs need to be managed, not just are performed by the pharmacist, but that information needs to find its way into the hands of our MAs and our nurses and even directly to our patients. And pharmacists can help operationalize, once again, that knowledge and get that out there in a place where we really are achieving great medication outcomes, where we are seeing improvements in adherence, we are seeing improvements in overall disease state reconciliation and reduced adverse events that really reduce cost and improve overall quality of care. So I think it's pharmacists, being in roles that are thinking broader. And as I mentioned earlier with me, creating a program that doesn't just affect one patient or one hospital, it affects a large population. I really see pharmacists taking on those roles in a broader and broader sense. And if you look at pharmacogenomics and other data and technology that's advancing, it really makes the practice of pharmacy more complex and have more need and more demand for those specialized skills. So I feel like the future is bright, although it's unclear exactly how much roles will shift from where we're at now to then. I think that the changes could be pretty dramatic.
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of us agree with that too. In pharmacy school, we're willing to adapt and change. And like you were saying, the virtual thing, I've always wondered, there's doctors on demand, nurses on demand. There's no pharmacists on demand yet in an app form. And so I've always wondered if that was a potential that could come about, like you were saying, in communications with other healthcare providers as well as with patient care. So I think that could be an interesting concept to come about in the future.
And there actually are pharmacists on demand now.
Oh, really?
There are a couple of services out there that are doing that now. I won't name names here, but but you can find that now. And that's a great point of where is that helping have access to care, or is that further fragmenting care if it's not, that care isn't provided in the context of having the information you need to understand the patient and working with other providers that are touching that patient. I think those are some of the interesting things about modern healthcare, that we're developing tools that give us the ability to do things we've never been able to do before. But are they always solving problems or creating new ones for us? And once again, I think that's where pharmacists can play a real role in shaping those policies and those practices, so that we optimize care, and we really see advances with technology and not just further fragmentation and unexpected problems.
Absolutely. And knowing when to use the resources versus not to use those resources too can be critical in judgment as well, I think.
Absolutely.
For when you're looking to hire new graduates, I know a lot of us in pharmacy school are worried about the job market, but what is a number one thing that you look at in a candidate when you are hiring a newly graduated pharmacist?
I get that question a lot. Big surprise, right? I work with a lot of pharmacy students and residents, and I think the number one thing that I look for, regardless of whether it's a new pharmacist or anybody I'm hiring, is what I'll call level jumping. And what that means is that they can look at different perspectives of the healthcare delivery that you're providing or the services you're providing. So once again, we're very good now at teaching pharmacists to work one-on-one with a patient to achieve good medication management outcomes. The question is, what can a pharmacist think beyond that to understand the bigger picture in the health system or in the pharmacy space or whatever, even if you're developing tools and technology to address patient care needs? It's like, can you understand that, yes, you're treating one diabetic patient and you're making recommendations to get their A1C under control, but what about the 1,500 patients that I'm responsible for? How do we manage those patients? And what do you understand about the cost and the prioritization of treating those patients versus other patients? And what does the outreach look like that around that? And how do we mobilize those services? And what are new ideas that might help us solve those problems and provide the right care for less money? And if somebody's asking me questions where I see that they get the bigger picture, that they understand that there's a business at play here and that the business has limited resources, but we want to do the right thing. And what questions do they ask? And jumping levels means being able to think about the needs at the patient care level, at the provider level, at the organization level, at that population level, and put yourself in those perspectives and understand the business problems that are present. Anytime you're interviewing for any type of a job, or somebody's hiring for a job, they're looking for that person to solve a problem for them. And I think a lot of times students and young pharmacists interviewing don't think about it that way. And so they're looking to bring you in, hoping that you can help them solve a problem. And that problem is usually broader in scope. And so the more that you can show that you get their business and you get what they're trying to do, You may not understand all of it up front, but you can ask the right questions to try and get information from them. That really goes a long ways toward showing that you're going to be a problem solver. So that's what I look for, number one.
Absolutely. I think that definitely further emphasizes too on your point of black and white versus gray area, and really seeing as a pharmacist, the whole gray area of, like you were saying, the outer businesses and the broader scheme of pharmacy. And then what's the best professional advice you've ever received during your career or when you were a student?
Yeah. I thought about that a little bit this last week and when I was talking to another student. And, I don't know that it was exact advice that somebody gave me or advice that I even asked for, but it was certainly watching the people that have been my mentors and have inspired me to see how they managed their careers. And this sounds so simple, but I think it's really critical is in knowing, being able to take risk and understanding when to take risk. I think you have to realize that no growth as a person and personal growth, no growth as a pharmacy department or as a business, it comes without change, and not all change results in improvement, but some can. And it means that you don't just make any change randomly. You take calculated risk. Anytime you change, there's a risk. And I think it really means that being able to think about what you want to do in your career and where you want to go, and not be afraid to take that step into the unknown a little bit. I think I see a lot of pharmacy students, particularly in this day and age where the world's a little chaotic, they're a little bit nervous about taking chances, and they don't want to. They feel like the path is a very straight process and everything's laid out, but you find out pretty quick in the real world it doesn't work that way. Just because you completed your program and got your residency doesn't mean the magic job appears. And so I always like to advise people to think about, what risk you want to take. And pharmacists tend to be very self-critical people, and they doubt themselves. And I think it's really important to recognize that you can probably do a lot more than you think you can. And somebody told me once, maybe this is advice, was like, if you're not sure if you want to do something or not, just take a big bite and start chewing. And it sounds like Western stage advice, but I think it's true in that, there's been a lot of times in my career I've left a very comfortable environment where I was maybe a knowledge leader and went to a new area of practice where I didn't know anything. And I was really the stupidest guy in the room for a good year. But, I kept working, and I bit and I chewed, and I was nervous and I didn't know what was going on, but ended up, that was a really great experience. I learned incredible amounts of things that I would not have learned before. I ended up, being successful, and you're not always successful in all those cases. You do have the risk of failure, and I think it's okay to say, failure is all right. I don't know anybody of my colleagues that have been in pharmacy for as long as I have, 30 years plus, that haven't had at some point, a job they've taken or a position they've moved into where it didn't work out very well. That's okay. You can bounce back from that. It's okay to have those risks and those perhaps small failures. So that's the number one thing I would say is, don't be afraid to take calculated risk. It's really not just something you should do. It's something you need to do to really make a difference in healthcare and to really have a satisfying career.
Yeah, it sounds like adaptability is a key concept for some of the student pharmacists to be able to learn during our time.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all the time we have now. Steve, I want to thank you so much for taking time to speak with me in the college. I think your experience will inspire many students to think outside of the box when it comes to their career in pharmacy, as well as the future of pharmacy.
Well, it's a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.